What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Quickfire Quiz. Today we've got one of our most popular guests, Jvala Singh, and we've got 9 quick questions to ask him starting now. What do you think's the most important lesson history's taught you?
Things are not as they seem, or things are not as they appear today. You know, if you look back, I think you'd be shocked to find what you see. I don't want to say who said this to me, but somebody said this, like, they would be, I think a lot of people would be shocked if they were to see the Kalasapant from back then today. I think that would be a little bit shocking to people.
Definitely.
Especially when you read somebody like Pangu describing the Kalasapant at Akal Takat when Subeg Singh comes from the Mughal Darbar to give that Kilat, that Nawabi Sapant. Pangu does a great job at describing. So yeah, just and because of that, I think the biggest gorn and the biggest virtue to have for those who are looking at historical texts is nimrata, is just having some humility. And this is like, you know, Guru Hargobind talks about how Sikhi, grows in the form of a plant. It's like Sikhi grows only in the ground of humility. That the bij, the seed of Sikhi can't grow anywhere else. So if you don't have any type of humility, and like, what does that mean then, humility in the context of looking at historical sources or Gurbani? It means that if you don't understand something, to not automatically say, oh, I disagree with it, and I'm going to disregard this. One should have the stance, I think a better way to take it is like, okay, I don't understand this. I need to learn more tools to make sense of this, or I need to seek out how I can make this work. So I think that approach, I'm lucky to have people close to me that have pushed that approach on me, and that approach I think is a beneficial approach to take.
Which book in general, I guess, has had the greatest influence on you? And you can't say the get out clause, which is Gurbani or Guru Granth Sahib Ji or Dasam Granth or anything like that.
Historical, Panth Prakash. I was probably, I want to say like 13 or 14. I was quite young when I stumbled across just a Punjabi version of Panth Prakash, and I was not a good reader at that age at all. But I could see in there that there was something in there. You know, I was at a friend's house, and their grandfather was like a historian, and he had, amateur historian. He collected a lot of books he liked to read. So I picked up this book, and I kind of skimming through it. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, it mentions Nahang Gurbak Singh, and I'm like, does this say Sukha in it? And I had heard that. I pointed it out to like the uncle of the house. I'm like, this says Sukha in here. Like, what does this mean? Is this talking about cannabis? What is this talking about? He closed the book. He put it on the top shelf. He said, don't read this book. I don't want you reading that book. And I was like, okay, I'm going to read everything I can get my hands on. And that kind of like, because in my mind, I'm a young person. I'm like, what are these people hiding? And these are like, they were quite religious, and they had kirtans a lot and all this type of stuff. And, I was kind of like drawn to then, what is in these old texts that is so shocking, and like I could see the fright on his face when he did that. So yeah, I would say Pangu kind of started it off for me.
Which book do you think everyone should read?
It really depends for what task. So I sometimes students ask me like, okay, I want to read something in English. What should I read? And I always say, okay, if it's history, and you want to read about the 18th century, read Pangu. It's been translated. That's great. If you want to read more about the community, then that's different. If you want to read something about, textual tradition, Dasam Granth, that would be different. Reinhardt's really good for that. So that's just really depends on like what you're interested in, and then you could kind of answer that question. But maybe if you gave me a topic, I could.
Which person from history would you like to have met? And I guess everyone would automatically say any of the gurus, but just outside of that.
And I would go Mani Singh for sure. I mean, he's the crown jewel of the 18th century, right?
Sorry, I was just gonna ask, why would you want to meet him over Kavi Santokh Singh?
I mean, I go number one. I go Mata Sahib Devan or Mata Sundari.
Yeah.
If it's not the gurus, because these Matawa, these mothers sat on the throne of the guru essentially after Guru Gobind Singh passes away, right? It talks about this in Mansabli Nama, that the Khalsa Panth would come to Mataji's The Mataji they're writing Hukamname and stuff like this. So that dynamic, I think, has not been explored much. Like, what was that dynamic, right? Like, Shibur, the author of Bansali Nama, writes about like he was kind of rolling around in the Darbar, like with Mata Sahib Deva, Mata Sundari around. So interesting. Like, what did that scene look like? So perhaps then, but I just find Money Singh's case interesting because, I mean, this is a close attendant of Guru Gobind Singh. This is somebody who compiled Odd and Dasam Guru Granth Sahib. And this is somebody at the end of Sikhani Bhagatamala that you can see that he's already receiving criticism. Like at the end of Sikhani Bhagatamala, he's writing, like, I put this up on a post. You can check out Mangalacharan Instagram or mangalacharan.com. At the end of Sikhani Bhagatamala, he's like, listen, I've written this Sikhani Prasantavaste, like for the pleasure, for the, you know, happiness of the Sikhs. And you can say, and he says there, like, for those nindaks, for those slanderers who want to slander, they're going to keep slandering, and that's just what they're going to do. But in front of them, I do ardas that, you know, if I've made any mistake, whatever. But you can just read between the lines there and see that, oh, he's already getting hate.
Yeah.
Like, which is really just fascinating to me. I mean, what was going through his mind, how he compiled all the Nassim and all of these type of questions. I would love to meet with him. But I mean, there's just so many. It's hard to say, like Sandok Singh, and then obviously like people like Nahan Gurbakh Singh, Baba Deep Singh, these people, like if they didn't just, you know, destroy you with their glance itself, you know, if you could even sustain to sit around them, I'm not sure if that's possible. But
what historical topic have you changed your mind on, and why?
I mean, we're talking now in April 2022, and this is something that for me it's become so interesting because I'm really diving as far as I can into Suraj. And I did that knowing that there's so much controversy surrounding Santokh Singh. People trying to paint him as a Nirmala. Santokh Singh's not a Nirmala. They're trying to paint him as, you know, this kind of somebody on the kind of sidelines of the Sikh tradition. No, he's like from the mainstay. He's as mainstream as you're going to get. Gyani Abunga, Akal Takht, like Sant Singh, Gyani, these are like the top, right? And he's using sources from, you know, by Money Singh, etc., all these guys. So I think what I found was so shocking to me, or at least that's what's holding in my head right now for the time being, is like how closely Santokh Singh is referring to and adapting to the original sources that he has at hand. I think I did not anticipate that. I'm not sure why I didn't. It could be the discourse surrounding these type of writings in the 19th century, or it just could be kind of, I've taken in too much of the slander of these type of people like Santokh Singh, just making things up. Like if people are going to criticize him on the Devi stuff, well, he didn't begin that. Like he's carrying on the tradition, which is like, okay, fine, you can still criticize the Devi stuff, but don't blame him. Like this comes from something before him, and you know, these points are all fine to criticize because hopefully then they'll lead to better answers, better examination over these texts and stuff like that. So like, I'm not saying never criticize anything or never look at something with, you know, a keen eye or under scrutiny. That will lead to hopefully something fruitful and productive. But yeah, just in my mind, more recently in the past couple of months, as I kind of do the podcast, I sometimes open up Guru Blast and I open up other texts which I can kind of track, okay, where he's at in terms of using source material. And that's something, because I have training as a lawyer, I just find so interesting that he's, in my mind, I'm kind of contextualizing it from a legal sense, like, oh, he's working from precedent and he's using precedent to kind of support his case now. And I'm just like, that's something that I had not appreciated, and perhaps others don't. And I think that really changes how we have to look at these type of texts as well. You know, instead of just like blaming Santokh. I think he would have been really shocked if he was around now and people would be like, oh, you know, you say this, and he's like, what? I'm just like, I'm using all of the previous stuff which has been largely accepted. So yeah, I think I would say that.
Is there any important historical text you have not read and that you obviously want to read?
Well, I mean, so because I'm diving deep into Suraj, people often ask me a very like specific question about did Guru Ram Das do this or Guru Har Rai Sahib do this, and I'm just like, Suraj Prakash is an ocean, and I'm on a very small boat, and I'm trying to cover as much as I can, and so there's a lot of things I've not read. To the stuff that I am reading, I'm trying to do the best that I can at it.
Okay.
But I think that's one thing people have to realize is that we're sitting on like just treasure troves of information. There's so much material. We often think that, oh, we don't have that much history. We have so much history. It's not been conveyed or translated in a sense that's applicable or readable to many people. I mean, Suraj Prakash not been translated. Bangu's only been translated recently.
Yep.
Gusoba's been only translated recently. All these, right? So I think with this, there's a bright future in that people are reading stuff now that I think our parents' generation or their like our grandparents had no idea about, and that wasn't their own fault. Like they didn't have the ability to go to the like headquarters of Sikh learning institutions and learn from them. So yeah, is there anything I've not read? I've not read a lot, but I try to do my best, but yeah, I think going forward, I would love to read more of Sikhani Pakhtmala. I think is just so interesting. These kind of back and forth questions, and we cover that. So if you guys look in Suraj podcast, there's portions there which relate to the Sikhs asking Guru Har Gobind spiritual questions, or just questions on anything. And I think we'll be shocked as a lot of the questions are similar to how if Guru Har Gobind was in front of us, some Sikhs would walk up and be like asking a similar question, be like, what's the deal with Kara Prashad? Where'd that come from? Like just a simple question like that. Meanwhile, you have other Sikhs being like, tell us about the metaphysical understanding of the earth or the world. Like there's such a range is what I'm saying, right? Of questions, which I think is interesting. But I think what I would like to read going forward, Sikhani Pakhtmala fully. I've not read Pangu's like line by line fully. Yeah, the Charitas of Guru Gobind Singh, I'd love to just sit down and read fully now that I have experience reading through narrative type of Braj Bhasha. So I think those are the three I could name.
Do you have a favorite archive?
My expertise is not in that, so I don't know. I mean, Tur is just a legend. You're right. Everybody would say Tur. Kapani collection.
Yeah.
Dr. Kupani has done a great job at supporting Sikh chairs in America. He recently passed away. So, nobody can do enough praise of him in supporting, the father of fiber optics. Kapani is a legend as well. I've not had a proper look at his collection, so I can't speak to that. I've seen pieces of it at the San Francisco Art Museum or South Asian Museum. I forget the exact name of it, but yeah, I would say those two, but I'm sure there's some gems in it. Oh, what I want to mention is the collections of Pai Rupa and like the Sodis of Kartarpur and like those type of collections are so interesting because they claim they have contemporary portraits of the gurus.
Yeah.
And some of those, like Guru Har Gobind's, looks legit because you could just see that there's a consistent depiction of Guru Har Gobind over different geographical settings, from like the Sodis of Kartarpur to Pai Rupa to Bidichand's, and those are going all around Punjab, right? They would have, so those type of collections held in the descendants of these lineages, right? Those are super interesting, and I wish we had more access to that. I mean, there's some good books on that. I think Sikh Heritage.
Yep.
I think I saw on your website you sell that. That's a great book. So those type of collections, if I knew more about them, I would probably say that because they actually have artifacts of the Guru. But definitely for everybody listening, have a look at those books because those paintings of the Gurus are fascinating. And I think they're so interesting to me, and I think other people that have always grown up with like these kind of paintings of Guru Gobind Singh that are basically just like Napoleon and like the Western in framework, and then you see what at least are claimed by familial lineages close to the Guru as being contemporary to them, and you're like, whoa, that's not what I thought the guru looked like, but wonderful. They're just
Yeah.
amazing paintings. So
What is one piece of advice that has helped you get through life?
I don't know. I think a good, just like, going back to that point about approach in material, I think that's a really good approach, and that just Nimrta is like the starting point. I think Nimrta has to be the starting point for everything related to Sikhi. Even if you're not reading Itihas history, even if you're just engaging Gurbani, and even if you're not engaging with Gurbani, if you're just doing Seva the Gurdwara, I think you have to have that approach. Otherwise, nothing is gonna, land on top of that. Like nothing, you're gonna build nothing on top of that. So I would say have that as an approach, and then everything else will come. It's like in a Hukamnama, Guru Gobind Singh's Hukamnama, I forget to what Sangat, what congregation, but it says specifically in there, like opus with Pyar Rakhna, that like within the Khalsa community, have love for each other. And then the line right after that is like Shastra Banket Ona, like, adorn weapons when you come. So it's like on one hand, it is to be like very soft and accepting and humble about things, but at the other hand, it's like, yeah, you have the thorns, you have the muscle to protect yourself and others as well. So I think having that approach is beneficial, and it's an approach that I try to remind myself often, and it's an approach which I fail to adhere to very often.
Welcome back to the Quickfire Quiz. Today we've got one of our most popular guests, Jvala. Who? Today we've got one of our...
Don't forget to like and subscribe.